And the river still shines and shimmers in the light as it did in our grandfather's day, when they rode all night to fish in the morning and lived in Willapa Bay.
Okay, so our next guest, Nahja Chimenti, is a traditional tall ship sailor. At 18, she got her license. She's been teaching boating and maritime skills in different contexts ever since. I'll let her tell you anything more about herself. Come on up here, Nahja.
Good evening. So the first thing, I have a bit of a confession to make. I am not a fisher person. I come from the world of tall ships. I was conceived on a tall ship. I was raised on and around tall ships. And as much as I hate to say it, to the layman, the person who doesn't know instinctively what a tall ship is, it's pretty much a pirate ship. But it's not a pirate ship. But that brings up the right image. So that's where I grew up. But there isn't a Tall Ship Poets Festival. So very gratefully, I get to come here. As Ron McDaniel said last night, there are some commonalities. And this piece, I hope you will find some commonalities with. It's called The Galley Stove. It is said that at the heart of a happy crew is a good cook. If that is so, in my experience, this is quite true, then the heart of the ship is the galley stove. On this ship, her name is Sadie, comforter in times of cold and woe, feeder of generations of crew and students, Satan's stand-in in midsummer, fount of that infinitely precious luxury, endless hot water. She is a great hulking metal beast stuffed into the corner of the galley, burned-in stains down the front of the oven, a fence around her edges, and a flock of fiddles waiting crammed together on the cool end of the griddle. Always a giant kettle or two burbling away. Being a diesel stove, she runs continuously around the clock, day in or day out. Her eternal fires go out only for occasional maintenance. At such times, esoteric rites of cooling and cleaning are performed, the fiddling with fine adjustments of fuel or air or chimney. Then comes the ceremony of relighting, the carefully formed pool of fuel, the lit wad of toilet paper, the waiting with crossed fingers for the flames to rise and steady, air to heat and draw. It is rather like open heart surgery has just been performed, and we wait with bated breath for the steady beat to start again. She is capricious from season to season. Under the ministrations of an interminable rota of different engineers, her inner workings alternately function smoothly or balk. This month, setting 5 barely boils water. The next, setting 2 burns anything you try to bake. This spring, she requires cleaning every week. Next fall, she runs flawlessly all season. Like an aged relative, you need to learn what her private gripe is each time, and then adjust. Cooking longer for each meal just now. Next, it might be baking with the oven door ajar. Sometimes the wind backs funny behind the mainsail and drives the smoke back down the chimney. But all this is small price to pay for her resolute, loyal service. I remember the first meal I learned to cook on Sadie. Of course, the galley was one of my favorite places to spend time. Even in early childhood, I grasped the dynamic of crew and cook. I reveled in the crew's appreciation of each hot meal on a rainy day, or batch of cookies after a long school program. So I badgered the cook to let me do more and more. Eventually, by the time I was 9 or 10 or so, I had earned my independence on one meal: pancake breakfast. Proudly I rose when woken at 5:30 a.m., tiptoeing through the sleeping main cabin, carefully closing the watertight door to the galley to dampen any future clattering of pans or metal bowls. I turned up the stove to cooking temperature from her nighttime low and move the little toggle that diverts the flame and heats the griddle. Priority 1, make coffee. Then start on pancakes. I had to climb on a stool to lift down the big 3-gallon bucket of pancake mix from deep storage shelf. Then, from below the counter, extract the giant bowl so large, a year before I could easily have curled up inside it. The careful measuring of water and dry mix, and stir just enough but not too much. If I was allowed to be fancy, I might then divide the gooey mass into smaller bowls and add things like chocolate chips or blueberries to make different batches. All that was the easy part. For you see, the true art was cooking the pancakes on Sadie. She was large enough for 2 cast iron pans, one big, one small, over the flame side, and still use the full griddle over the oven. However, every 2 square inches was a different temperature from every other 2 square inches. Not a problem for a large pot of soup, but rather challenging for 3 to 4 inch discs. In full pancake making swing, there could be as many as 10 to 15 pancakes covering the surface. The ones on the far side of the griddle might take 3 times as long to cook as the ones directly over the flame. It was quite a lot for one 10-year-old to keep track of at 6 a.m. in the morning. I was rightly proud of my successes, though there were a few failures too, and more than one burnt pancake ended up in the compost bucket. I would sit there like a mother hen, watching her chicks flipping pancakes madly while the ship came to life around me. The crew woke, consumed the coffee I had made, stowed the cabins for the day. An hour or so later, the last pancake came off the cool end of the griddle and was added to the heaping tray in the oven. I would set up the serving counter at the mouth of the galley, take syrup and jam out to the great table in the main cabin, and at last set out my great labor of love. 50 to 100 or more pancakes in a great steaming heap, waiting to fill cold morning bellies and fuel a hard day's work of teaching and sailing. Together, Sadie and I helped everyone start the day strong. Years later, I returned to work aboard the ship as professional crew. It was a hard spring season with too much to do and too little time. The crew never quite bonding in the way it takes to make such trials light. Yet, I can say, without a doubt, my best day of the season was the one I traded places with the cook. It turned out to be a horrible day, rainy and windy, and on top of it all, doing multiple day sails off an island with no dock, every passenger ferried out from the beach by small boat. Through it all, Sadie and I worked to keep our crew warm by proxy. Together, we made cookies to warm their spirits and rich fried rice to heat their bodies. Whatever trials and tribulations they suffered on deck, when they came below, only their gratitude showed. Thankfulness for our contribution to the sustenance of body and soul. All that day, Sadie ran smooth and easy, a radiant anchor for the storm-tossed crew. And for the first time all season, I was truly happy. I had a real sense of value and purpose. At the end of the sailing season, the ship is laid up for the cold winter months. The southerly gales drive ragged sheets of rain across the harbor. Below, the cabins are gutted of comfort. Hard surfaces laid bare for maintenance. Piles of blocks and shackles fill the bunks. Tools and manuals crowd the tables. But in the galley, Sadie still hums along, source of endless pots of hot coffee and steaming tea kettles. In pride of place, a giant pot of soup of the day, filled with winter roots, cast-offs from the local farmer's market. At lunchtime, workers and volunteers gather from their various far-flung tasks, drawn by the promise of nourishing stew to the cozy heart of the ship. In small flocks, they move through the galley, clustering close to Sadie's radiance, to toast their rumps and drive the chill from their toes. The great ladles are unhooked from above the stove, and the boiling bisque is served out. In the main cabin, they gather and perch with their steaming bowls, like roosting wrens amongst the heaps of gear, warming hands and bones with Sadie's heat, their hearts and souls with stories and laughter. So I do a number of things in the tall ship worlds these days. Mostly I run the family business of sailmaking and rigging. But I also teach. I teach maritime skills, I teach sailing, and I often say that I've grown up sailing. I've been sailing my whole life. Sailing is not what I do for fun. On my days off, when people say, hey, you want to go sailing with me? I say, no. But this piece is called How to Sail. You may start by getting a basic lesson, taking classes at some boat institution, or a tutorial from a friend who knows a thing or two about boats. They will teach you about masts and booms, sails and spars, halyards, sheets, shrouds, stays, and swamp you with a whole new lingo that leaves you feeling like you just visited a foreign country. You will learn how to use a rudder or a wheel, how the sail should be filled with wind, and what it means to be in irons. They will explain that tacking is moving the bow through the wind, and jibing, which they stress is very dangerous, is moving the stern through the wind. They will go on about turning up and turning down, which makes no sense until they clarify that the wind is the top of a sailor's world. Eventually, you will proudly wobble a sailing craft across the bay on your own. And without further ado, you are hooked by the challenge and grace of it. You will think, if only I could master this, then I would truly be free. So you start reading about sail theory. You go down rabbit holes of particle flows and slot effects. You research hull design and fluid dynamics. Then, when you go out to sail, you study the telltales closely and are constantly adjusting the sheets, trying to achieve perfect trim. You mess with Cunningham's and backstay tension. It is all-consuming, and you are jumping up every few minutes to tweak this or that. At the end of the day, you are exhausted, but exhilarated. A friend asks if you had a relaxing day on the water. You grin and say, not exactly, but I sure put her through her paces. Then you go home and sleep a solid 12 hours to recover from the excitement. Keep going, my friend. Go, geek out, learn the science. Try all the tweaks, but remember to let go, too. Give your intuition space to blossom. Sail for hours, days, weeks, years. Let your awareness expand around you like some freakish sensor cloud. Then one day, all those theories, all those designs won't matter anymore. One day, you will comprehend that the goal is not to simply make her go as fast as possible. One day, you will be out there and realize that it is just you, the boat, the water, and the wind. Nothing more. You will need no telltales. Instead, feeling the surge of the vessel through the soles of your feet and the seat of your pants. You will see the patterns of the wind on the water and adjust for them before they arrive, intuitively. You will pump the helm instinctively in a swell, keeping your craft straight and calm. Without fuss, you will trim the sheets just right, then let them be. You will adjust your course with your eyes closed, feeling the hum of contentment that arises from the keel as she settles in to the perfect angle of the wind. Soon the rigging joins in, then under the steady guidance of your meditative hand, the whole boat is singing. Mind blissfully empty, at one with the ship, you skim across the waters, the sun on your cheek, the wind in your hair. You will sail by the song, responding to changes of pitch or rhythm, like a pair of dancers in a close embrace tango. Time unrolls into one long, perfect moment. This is no science. It is far older than that. It is art. It is skill taken far beyond logic and patience and practice. True mastery. When the infinitely complex, through moil and toil, has boiled down to its essence and become the simplest of things. Wind on sail, water on hull, and hands that move without conscious thought to bind them together effortlessly. Now that is really how to sail. When at last you come back to port, sliding smoothly into your slip, you are serene. It has been a long day of sun and sea, wind and wave, but now you feel refreshed and at peace. Thank you.
Thank you, Nahja. Nice images.
White Maine spruce, grain so even, you can almost hear the music now. Sidewood bent in the water steaming, and the easy slide of a dovetail saw. I learned these skills, but no one taught me to make guitars that others play. Too much rain and darn long winters, but I love the work of a luthier's trade.
Okay, thank you so much for talking with us today about the FisherPoets Gathering. We really appreciate your stopping. Can I ask your names and where you're from?
Christine
And Phil.
from Portland.
Yeah.
And is this your first time at the Poets Gathering?
No, it's
Third.
our third time. Third time
Yeah.
at the Poets.
Okay.
Before COVID and this one.
So if you're here 3 times, you really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
It's motivated you to come back. What is it you've super enjoyed about it?
Oh, the variety.
The variety. Yeah. There's some of the artists you want to hear longer, and yet 15 minutes and then you're on to kind of somebody else, and the songs and the poetry and the prose, and some of it's very heartwarming and some of it's just funny.
Yeah, exactly that.
Okay, I know we only had performances last night that you probably went to. We haven't seen tonight's yet, but for what you've seen so far this year, what was your favorite?
Oh, I couldn't do that.
Yeah, it's such a variety.
It's the immersive experience, and there's such heart from each of those that are presenting, and it's such an honor and privilege to be in the audience. So we're loving all of it.
Oh my gosh, you were the perfect people to interview. So you said that so beautifully. So tips for anybody coming in, or anything you want to tell them to lure them in?
You can't go wrong with any of the venues. Just pick one, and I don't know.
And you can always get up and walk at any time, and it's so welcoming here in Astoria, and it's a perfect spot. And it's small. It feels like intimate encounter, being able to hear these such personal stories, and then you get to mill around and see faces that look familiar and new faces, and you just come. You're gonna love it.
You know what? It's been my privilege to talk with the two of you. Thank you so much for your time.